They did not create the wound. They revealed it. That is the part almost nobody wants to hear. Because it is much easier to believe that the person who ignored you, insulted you, rejected you, betrayed you, disrespected you, or abandoned you caused all of your pain. And sometimes they did cause pain. But Epictetus would force a harder distinction. Pain is one thing. The story your mind attaches to pain is another. And most of what devastates people is not the event alone. It is the meaning they instantly assign to the event. That text did not just go unanswered. It meant you were not important. That criticism was not just criticism. It meant you were inadequate. That rejection was not just rejection. It meant you were unlovable. That disrespect was not just disrespect. It meant you were small. That betrayal was not just betrayal. It meant you were a fool for trusting anyone. This is how suffering multiplies. The event lands once. Then the interpretation keeps striking you from the inside. Epictetus understood something that modern people still resist with all their strength. What hurts you fastest is often not what they did. It is what their behavior activated in you. That is why the same insult destroys one person and barely touches another. The same rejection sends one person into collapse and another into clarity. The same criticism causes one person to spiral and another to reflect. Why? Because human beings do not react only to facts, they react to wounds. And a wound is not just pain from the past. It is a conclusion, a buried verdict. Something you came to believe about yourself a long time ago, then forgot was a belief. Maybe the verdict, I am not enough. I am easy to leave. I am easy to replace. I am not respected. I am always behind. I am too much. I am not chosen. I am not safe. I am fundamentally lacking in some invisible way everyone else can somehow see. And once that verdict is inside you, life becomes full of moments that seem to confirm it. That is why certain people can destabilize you so quickly. Not because they are extraordinarily powerful, but because they found the bruise. Epictetus would say this is where most people lose their freedom. They believe the problem is out there, so they devote themselves to changing other people, convincing them, punishing them, escaping them, winning against them, getting closure from them, getting apology from them, getting recognition from them. But the deeper source of suffering remains untouched, because the real pain was never just their behavior. The real pain was the inner sentence. Their behavior awakened. And unless that sentence is examined, life becomes a repetition machine. Different faces, same wound, different relationships. Same trigger, different rooms. Same collapse. Different arguments, same emotional pattern. That is why some people keep saying, why does this always happen to me? Epictetus would answer, because the world keeps touching the place you have not healed. And until you understand that, you will keep misreading exposure as injury. This is one of the cruelest dynamics in human life. A person thinks they are being destroyed by others, but often they are being shown to themselves. And those are not the same thing. This is why emotional triggers matter so much. A trigger is not merely proof that something outside you was wrong. It is evidence that something inside you is unfinished. That does not mean the other person is innocent. It does not mean mistreatment is acceptable. It does not mean abuse should be tolerated. It means something far more useful. Your reaction contains information. information about where your identity is fragile, where your self-respect is outsourced, where your worth still depends on external treatment, where your past is still writing your present. This is why Epictetus is so psychologically dangerous. He removes your favorite excuse. He takes away the comforting fantasy that if difficult people disappeared, you would finally be whole. No, you would simply be less exposed, and there is a difference between being healed and being untested. A person who feels peaceful only around easy people is not peaceful. They are protected. A person who feels confident only when affirmed is not confident. They are supported. A person who feels valuable only when chosen is not secure. They are dependent. Epictetus is not trying to make you cold. He is trying to make you free. Free from the need for every interaction to confirm your worth. Free from the need for every criticism to become a verdict. Free from the need for every disappointment to become identity. Because this is what maturity really is. Not becoming impossible to hurt, but becoming able to feel hurt without instantly turning hurt into self-definition. That is the move. Not numbness, not detachment in the dead sense. Not pretending not to care. Awareness. The ability to say, this hurts. But what exactly is hurting? The event? Or the old story, this event just activated? That single question changes everything. Because once you can separate the event from the wound, you begin to recover power. You stop collapsing into totality. You stop saying, this proves everything I fear. You stop letting one person become evidence for an entire worldview. You stop turning moments into verdicts. And that is where real healing begins. Not in blaming less, but in seeing more clearly. Maybe they were rude. Maybe they were selfish. Maybe they were dishonest. Maybe they were careless. Fine. But what did it touch in you? That is the question strong people ask. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they refuse to waste pain. Most people waste their pain. They convert it immediately into accusation, performance, revenge, self-pity, obsession, or retreat. Very few people metabolize it into insight. Epictetus would tell you to become one of the few, to treat your reactions as maps. Because if something consistently triggers disproportionate pain, that pain is trying to show you the architecture of your identity. Where are you still asking others to prove that you matter? Where are you still begging the world to certify your worth? Where are you still a child inside, waiting for a sentence to be reversed? These are dangerous questions, but they are liberating questions. Because once the wound is visible, it can no longer rule from the shadows. This is why self-knowledge matters more than emotional control. A person can look calm and still be ruled by invisible injuries. A person can seem composed and still interpret every glance, every delay, every criticism, every withdrawal through the same old private terror. What Epictetus wants is not surface control. He wants sovereignty, a mind that no longer gives every external event permission to define the self. And the truth is, most people are not devastated by reality. They are devastated by what reality seems to confirm about them. That is why two people can experience the same rejection and leave with completely different levels of suffering. One says, that hurt. The other says, that hurt, and now I know I am worthless. The second wound is always deeper, and it is almost always self-inflicted through interpretation. This is not blame. It is possibility. Because if interpretation is involved, then transformation is possible. If the wound includes a story, then the story can be examined. And if the story can be examined, then it can stop running your life. This is where dignity returns. You begin to realize that not every trigger is a command. Not every emotion is a truth. Not every pain is a prophecy. Not every reaction deserves your obedience. And not every person who disturbs you has power over you. Some of them simply revealed where power over yourself has not yet been reclaimed. That is the difference between living reactively and living philosophically. The reactive person asks, how do I stop people from making me feel this? The philosophical person asks, what in me is still available to be ruled this way? That second question is harder, but it is the only one that leads to freedom. Because the goal is not to build a life where nobody ever touches your wound. The goal is to heal the wound so deeply that when life touches it, it no longer gets to become your identity. That is real strength, not domination, not emotional theater, not appearing unbothered. The ability to remain yourself in the presence of what once would have shattered you, that is what Epictetus is pointing toward. Not a smaller emotional life, a stronger center. So the next time someone's behavior hits you with disproportionate force, pause before you worship the event. Pause before you make them the author of all your pain. Pause before you call it proof. And ask the question that changes everything. What did this reveal that was already hurting in me? Because that is the moment the trigger stops being merely suffering and starts becoming instruction. And for the person willing to learn from it, that is where the path out begins.